Good evening, welcome to POTRBLOG for May 19th, 2012. Radioactive contamination has been found in and on U.S. ground beef.
Here's a summary of the nuclides detected in the ground beef sample. This is from all-natural grass-fed beef with a well water source. The sample of this cow was approximately 2 years of age when it went to the butcher. It went to the butcher on July 20th of 2011. So this sample was 10 months old when it was recently set in for testing to a professional lab. And what you see here are the results of that testing. It's a veritable smorgasbord of Fukushima fallout. Now, these tests cost the POTRBLOG team approximately $1,100 to do these tests. That's why we've added a donate button on the POTRBLOG website, so you may help us support food testing for radiological contamination. We still have available pre-Fukushima all-natural grass-fed beef and pasture-raised pork that we can test. And we also have access to fresh all-natural grass-fed beef, pasture pork, and chicken. So if you're interested in knowing the truth and bringing that information to the light of day, please use the donate button on the POTRBLOG.com website. Our goal is to independently and accurately determine what the true risk the populace faces from Fukushima fallout contaminating the food supply. And we believe, if we're able to do all these tests with your support, that we'll be able to identify specific farming practices that will help you pick locations that will reduce your risk of fallout if you're so inclined. Now let's look at the results quickly. Now, the reason we said fallout contamination was detected in and on the beef is that one key thing to remember is this sample is 10 months old. So there's a lot of fallout products in here that could not have existed in this beef 10 months ago without the beef glowing in the dark. And a prime example of this is barium 140. This barium 140, I believe, has a 12-day half-life. It was detected overall at just below the 95% confidence level. There were certain peaks that were above the 95% confidence level. Its daughter product, LA140, was also detected. If this barium 140 were in this ground beef when we brought it home and put it in our freezer, it would have read nearly 3 billion becquerels per kilogram. 3 billion becquerels per kilogram. So this is not a contamination that occurred 10 months ago. This contamination, we believe, occurred on April 29th. We had to send in samples to this lab, and the samples were in 1 pound chunks, so we had to break them up and put them in 1 kilogram chunks. As we did that, we set the beef out on the table, and it was exposed to the air for approximately 20 to 30 minutes. And the beef was at minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And basically it developed frost. Air condensation hit this beef. And we believe this is where this contamination came from. And this is recent, from a recent criticality, a recent fission event. And these are also soot products indicating a fire. Some of these other products detected in the sample would also tend to indicate it's from a fuel rod. So what we believe is that there has been a recent fuel rod fire at Fukushima. And that's a scary thought. In terms of what is in the beef, the cesium-137, it is above the detection is above the 95% confidence level. The good news aspect of this, if there is any good news, is that this cesium-137 detection is approximately 2,000 times less than the minimum allowed by European countries for infant food, if you will. So from that perspective, it's a low value. But the fact is you can't get away from Fukushima fallout these days. There's a little bit of Fukushima in all of us, and in some sense it reminds me of the old Vapor song. I think I'm turning Japanese. I think I'm turning Japanese. I really think so. Well, there's a little bit of Japan in all of us. Hopefully, if we practice proper risk mitigation, those of us who take heed and are careful will be at a lot less risk than those who won't take heed. Now, I'm going to scroll down here to the Strontium Plutonium tests. Now, we had these results. These are from the same cow, but from a different lab. We also paid to have strontium and plutonium testing performed. Now, our understanding is there's not a direct specification for doing these tests in food. So these were marked for informational purposes only. The values are negative, and the reason that's a negative number is because what they do is they measure a blank sample and they get a reading from it. So if they measure a sample with absolutely nothing on it, but their reading says 100, they know 100 means 0. Then they measure your sample, and if your sample says 50, then what they do is they subtract the blank from your sample, and you would get minus 50. Now, there is one troubling aspect to this, and it's these 95% confidence levels given here. For example, for plutonium-239, it is 0.047 picocuries per kilogram. That is not very sensitive. The testing the EPA was doing was approximately 10 million times more sensitive than this test. In terms that people can understand, what this really means is that you can have approximately 2 billion, and that's a billion with a B, plutonium-239 atoms in your in 1 gram of beef, and it would not show up above the 95% confidence level. That works out to 2 trillion plutonium-239 atoms per kilogram of beef. So we're not 100% comfortable that doing these tests are cost effective. One thing that makes us want to retest the fresh beef for this contaminant is that on September of 2011 we had a fallout event here in St. Louis where we believe we detected neptunium-239 based on the decay signature that turns into plutonium-239. And that event occurred after this beef went to the butcher. So if there was plutonium fallout in large enough quantities to detect, it would have happened in something we can detect in the next sample. So our general concern, and we'll summarize it at this point, for our purposes here at the POTRBLOG team, we're happy with this beef, and we really like this farmer. Maybe happy is not the right word, but I'd prefer if there was no Fukushima in this beef. But as far as things go, this is probably better than most people have. And the reason for that is because the beef is from a water source that's protected. It's on a rolling hill. But let's go on into some detail here. And I don't want this video to take forever. But here's some detail analysis. And I'll give you just a little more detailed information. If you look up here, Ortec, this is the name of the software that did the analysis. It's ENV32. This is the type of analysis engine that was used to look at the gamma spectrometry and determine what is inside the sample. The key thing about this ENV32 analysis is what it does is it looks through the gamma spectrum, and in the first pass it tries to pick out peaks for nuclides that are in its library, but where there's not a complete set of peaks. So for example, if you had to identify uranium-235, you might have 5 peaks that 5 different peaks that confirm to uranium-235, but only one of them shows up during this time period. So they pull out that one peak and basically remove that data from the sample, and then they run through the sample again, looking at the improved data. So that's the key feature of this. Now, one thing we have done with these tests is removed personal identifiable information, and we've also removed the name of the labs that have done this test. Now, there's a reason we do that, and one is we actually had some difficulty in getting these tests done. We tried to do this initially in March, and it was a different lab, and when it came time to take our money, they decided at the last instant they didn't want our money. It was very strange. So we're not sharing the information of who we are or where this specific labs that were involved. Another key thing here's the test date of the beef. This is not the test date, but this is when the beef went to the butcher, 7/20/11, and that's the date and time they used to back calculate what the activity was at that point. Now, here's a summary of peaks that were in range. Now, what you'll see here is three that pop out. The barium 140. Now, this is actually likely much greater than the 95% confidence level. But this value is its branching ratio, which gives you an idea of how many peaks there are. Basically 20% of the peaks are at this energy level. And this software, what it does is to try to determine the activity. It uses an averaging formula to average out over the peaks. So even though there was one here where the activity was higher than the 95% confidence level, when it averaged out, it went over multiple peaks and went less than 95%. There's also RU103 was detected here, and the same thing at significantly greater than the 95% confidence level. But again, it's only 5% of the peaks, so it averaged out below. The one that remained above was the cesium-137. So next thing we'll do is scroll down, and we'll have what it lists as the identified peak summaries, and that's the barium 140 and cesium-137. Now here's the unidentified peak summaries. This is where the software makes guesses at what the contaminant is. And if we look over here at the right, you'll see a whole list of contaminants which it guesses. And the interesting ones here to note are the thorium-234 and the metastable, where is it? Here, PA-234M metastable down here. Yeah, these are the daughter products of uranium-238. Excuse me. Uranium-238 does not show up very well on gamma spectrometry because it's got a very low energy level, but its daughter products show up much better. So this is a relatively good indication that uranium-238 is also in the beef, just at a very low level. And at the same time, there's also a direct detection here, at least two of them, from uranium-235. And if we scroll down here, and then here's a common one which people often see, potassium-40. That also is shown up in here. So that's the quick summary of what's going on here. And I'll take you back up to the top page here, where we can look at the summary of nuclides in the sample that were identified. And I'll give you a quick discussion of what this 95% confidence level is. All these here with this less than sign, and these are all radionuclides that were identified at less than the 95% confidence level. And that means, for example, a beryllium-7 here was identified existing in the sample at an activity of less than 1.7 times 10 to the minus 2 picocuries per gram. The exception to those are the cesium-137 and the barium-140. Cesium-137 was greater than the 95% confidence level. It was at 4.8 times 10 to the minus 3, and the 95% confidence level is 3.45 times 10 to the minus 3. The barium, on average, even though there were individual peaks greater than the 95% confidence level, there was the average was slightly less than the 95% confidence level. Now, here's what the 95% confidence level means. Imagine you had a poison detector that could detect rat poison in a drink. If your rat poison detector said there was a tablespoon of rat poison in your drink, you could be 95% sure that there was rat poison in your drink. If the rat poison detector detected a cup of rat poison in your drink, you could be 99.999% sure there was rat poison in your drink. You couldn't be 100% sure, but you could be 99.99% sure. If the rat poison detector detected a teaspoon of rat poison in your drink, it would indicate that it was only 50% sure that there was rat poison in your drink. Now, if you're the hard scientists, if they need to be very, very sure that there's something in their sample, they want it above the 95% confidence level. You don't want to do a lot of tests and spend a lot of money and then find out that there was a small error. On the other hand, if you're worried about risk mitigation and somebody gives you a glass and the rat poison detector says it has a teaspoon of rat poison in it, do you want the person handing you the glass to say, oh, there was a non-detect for rat poison in your drink? Or would you want the person to say, we detected a teaspoon of rat poison in your drink and we're 50% certain it's there? Would you feel more comfortable drinking rat poison at 50% if it was called a no detect? That's in essence what these no detect means. Now, or these less than 95% confidence levels mean, but they're based on their individuality. For example, barium 140, the confidence level doesn't include that its daughter product was also detected. So if you take the pair and you start looking at the system, then there's a much greater chance that there were these detections were actually there. Now, a lot of these are very troubling to us. I specifically didn't like seeing the silver 100 and metastable 110 in here, even though it's at a very low concentration and has a half-life about a year. So it was the original concentration would have been double this. The same with the cesium 134. It has a half-life, I believe, of approximately 2 years. So a significant chunk has disappeared by the time we did this test. Now, we could talk about this in detail for probably hours, but I don't want a 5-hour video. The key is that we still have pre-Fukushima beef and pork. We know exactly where it came from. We know how it was humanely raised, and we can establish baselines. If you're interested in finding out the truth, well, I ask that you step up and help us find the truth and determine it independently. And you can do that by donating at the POTRBLOG site, www.potterblog.com, where you see the donate button. In the meantime, the key piece of advice here is if you're thawing something that's ice cold, thaw it inside a Ziploc bag or a vacuum bag. You'll reduce your exposure risk to airborne fallout contamination. And just so you understand what that level of contamination was airborne, is if we go here and we put it in terms of becquerels per kilogram, just from this 20 to 30 minute exposure to condensation, there was 1.35 becquerels per kilogram was the barium 140 concentration. That means once every 3 seconds, the barium 140 that was in the air, the fallout from the recent recriticality and fuel rod fire, was discharging in the air in your lungs, basically, once every 3 seconds. The cesium 137 that was in the beef was actually at 0.177 becquerels per kilogram, which means basically a disintegration every 5.62 seconds. So use your risk mitigation. I think we're at the point where we're going to run HEPA filters full time in our house, not just during rainstorms. And it's very troubling that things like barium-140, its daughter product, and iron-59, zirconium, and the zinc products, that these are floating around in the air from a recent fuel fire. It makes us concerned if the situation doesn't get worse. Now there's one short half-life item in here, this RH106, that is more than likely what it was in the beef, because this RH106, it lasts milliseconds. Its half-life is in milliseconds. But its parent product, RU106, has a half-life, I believe, on the order of a year. So it's interesting that I think the parent product is primarily a beta decay. So it's hard to pick up on gamma spectrometry, but you can pick up its daughter product. So, troubling as it is, it's good information to have. I only wish our government hadn't stopped shutting off what it shared with us after its first plutonium detection in San Francisco right after Fukushima. Good night.